I always tell people, I always tell my students, they say that, I'm often asked the question that, whenever they go for interviews, the companies ask them, do you have any questions for us? He says, what should I ask? I tell the students, ask them how they do their pricing. Most companies cannot articulate how they do their pricing. Apart from some silly cost plus, they have no idea. They have no idea what price elasticity is. I've asked banks, I've done some consulting for banks. They are just into some direct marketing campaign and program. I've always asked them, what would happen to your deposits if you increase by 0.5%? No idea. Everybody offers the same 4.25%. All the banks, right? You ask them that simple question, what would happen to you if you go to 3.75 or 4.75? They have no idea, no clue. Okay, and and by the way, talk about scalability. One bank that they figured out was ING. I don't know if you know that. ING as a bank is the largest online bank. Just ripped out all the cost, gave customers 0.5% more in terms of competitive on savings. You should see their assets the way that they've grown. Okay, so that's what. So those are the things. So we will talk about that here as well. But one of the things that you should really ask yourself is the flip side of free markets. Not only the free markets, value creation. What is a scalable enterprise? Those issues are important. The issues that are equally important is, like some of you point out, sometimes you can get obsessed with cost, not think in terms of value that you're creating in the marketplace. Think about Apple iPod. Right? Think about Apple iPod. Do you know Apple iPod at that point in time wasn't the greatest technology, wasn't the best technology. On a pure performance, was the most expensive product. And here is something interesting about Apple iPod and why it just single-handedly made Apple more. Do you know how much it costs you to do the laser? You know that you could etch your name if you have a teenage son or daughter. You probably would know this. Do you know you could get your name lasered, in a nice lasered way on each iPod? Do you know how much they charge for that? $20. Do you know how much is the variable cost for something like that? A couple of pennies, right? And the interesting part is, someone told me, if you laser print your name and you buy whatever the jacket, okay, you have paid for all the variable cost of the product, including the iPod. That's it. You get someone to laser name it, put the jacket on it, and then the remaining whatever $140 that they pay just goes down to your bottom line. Okay, so that's what I think you miss sometimes if you excessively focus on pricing. And some of you, I think you should just, when you get a chance, just take a look at Whole Foods and how it had grown. Perhaps if we get time, we can just even quickly look at what is Whole Foods market cap and look at its 5-year trajectory and see what would have happened if we liked organic food 5 years ago. Okay. So some of the other issues, free markets is one aspect of things. So let's kind of go into this whole e-business, e-marketing, and what are some of the critical issues, right? E-marketing and then new business models. So this was always the fascination. Why did we get so fascinated with the internet? These are the reasons, right? Disintermediate. Disintermediate is the promise. We eliminate layers of intermediaries, non-value added intermediaries. Okay? And then create very close alignment between demand and supply. We drive down the cost substantially. Okay? Creates dramatically higher sales and therefore higher profit. That was the promise of the internet. That, it's not like people jumped in, people got excited about this without a good reason. And by the way, disintermediation is not a brand new story. Some companies were doing it even before internet. Dell is a known example. Dell started doing disintermediation before. And by the way, there is a wonderful company called Calix and Corolla. Calix, and sometimes you're a victim of your own success. It was a startup company by a Harvard MBA by name Ruth Ordis. She started the company. One of the interesting story about flower market is that there are 4 layers of intermediaries. And so what you get from South America, a bunch of roses that you pay to the farmer or the horticulturist $1 will eventually cost you somewhere close to about $20, $25 to end customer. Okay, that's the first part. The second part was those flowers actually stay in transit for 8 to 9 days because the layers of supply chain that it goes through. Okay, and then what happens is when it takes 7 to 9 days, the flowers that you get are in perhaps full bloom, but they're not going to last much longer. If you had them when they were in semi-bloom, you would have enjoyed the flowers for much longer time. So she disintermediates. It's one of the fascinating stories is she could have been the Amazon. She just didn't see the internet coming along, didn't see the opportunity to disintermediate. So disintermediation is not the idea that started after internet. Some companies tried to do it with phone, fax, and FedEx technology. By the way, phone, fax, the reason why Calyx and Corolla could succeed was FedEx had started the operation. They could move within 24 hours, cut flowers to any customer around the world. Okay. Now, most companies failed. In spite of this, most companies failed. Does anyone know what the reason is? Why do most companies fail in this space? Seems like such a compelling story. Why did most companies fail? Does anyone know? Why did most companies fail?
The infrastructure is a physical infrastructure to deliver this, while the information costs were much more quickly.
Yeah, the physical infrastructure wasn't there. That's a big problem. That's what Webvan learned, right? I cannot deliver groceries home because I need very different sort of warehouses and so on and so forth. It's enormously expensive. Any other reason? Any other reason why these companies never succeeded? What's the biggest challenge in, yeah, go ahead, Joe.
No recognition.
No recognition, and so what does that mean?
Completely invisible to the market.
Completely invisible to the market, and so I have to do a lot of advertising.
And very hard to advertise.
Very hard on advertising and branding. And part of the problem was a lot of branding was done by people who had no expertise in branding. No base work, no knowledge about branding. They have never done. Branding is a very, it's a serious science. If you ask the ad agencies and the Procter & Gamble's of the world, this was 20-somethings who thought that I'll just put a funny name and show some funny advertisement and people will come and buy. Okay, some of the worst offenders there was this company called Outpost.com. I think Outpost, is that the name? I think so. And they had gerbils being shot out of cannons. Right? A $70 million advertising campaign. So people, did it attract attention? Yes. They knew some companies, shooting gerbils out of cannons, but they had no idea what this company is doing, why I should go through a website or anything like that. So in the process, a combination of lack of visibility, enormous advertisement requirement, okay, and the third part of the thing is that the two of them translate into what is your customer acquisition cost. Right? This all boils down to your customer acquisition cost. The problem with most of these models were like this. Do you know what was the average customer acquisition cost for most companies, most B2C companies in the very early stages? Somewhere around $400. And if a customer bought and stayed with them for a while, let's say a year or two, and bought, the lifetime value of a customer is somewhere around, maybe $40. How is this business model going to work? What has to give? How are you going to make this business model work? Reverse it, if you could. Hard to gain value. What do I need to do? You think this will, with the number of customers, as I become well known, this will come down. So the expectation was this will come down like this. And so that's why for a while people said, don't worry if we are not making money. They said that if we see this trajectory, eventually when you get here, look at what happens. When you get to the $5 range, then you're going to be enormously profitable. Right? But what happened was, for a lot of companies, this trajectory came down, but unfortunately came down to this. It got stuck somewhere around $80. Okay? But why did we believe this line is true? Because of this term viral marketing. Have you ever heard the term viral marketing? How many of you know a company called Hotmail? Right? Particularly, you'll see more international people showing up their hands. That is the first free email. Right? Hotmail was the first free email on the internet. The founders were running around trying to raise about $300,000 for that company, and they could not get the money. And finally, I think Draper Fisher Jarbertson invested. It's a VC firm. They projected 6 million users by the end of the first year, right? And the VC said, okay, we know you guys are enthusiastic and we have given you this money. I know you guys are going to do a good job, but nobody in the history of the world had ever had on any product more than 2 million users. So when you guys come back and say you're going to have 6 million users, they said this doesn't make sense. So in any event, the long and short story is, at the end of the first year, they had 11 million users. Okay, their biggest problem in the first year was how to just get the servers and scale up. And that is the term. So the Tim Draper coined the term viral marketing. Some things just catch on like wildfire. Just people start using, right? And he was always focused on ideas that had viral marketing effect, because he knew if you had viral marketing, this will happen. You can spend some money in customer acquisition, but you will see the real crash. This is what happened with Hotmail, literally, virtually, literally. Towards the end, I mean, it's part of Microsoft. Hotmail is part of Microsoft now. They bought them for $500 million or something like that. Okay, but so the customer but why? So the one thing that we had figured out was this is unfortunately this doesn't happen very often. It's hard to guess, easy to figure out ex post. That is, after it has happened, it's easy to see. It's hard to see before. Okay, and so a lot of companies got stuck in this, including a company that someone in Pittsburgh, one of my students, founded from the same company which funded. Right? Even John might know, Online Choice. Same idea. What is the idea? It was the idea that they felt that it had great viral marketing potential. The idea was, gee, Alcoa gets electricity much cheaper than you and me because they are a big industrial buyer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pool 10,000 customers online and use them as if it's a B2B buying, and then go and negotiate with Alcoa saying, I've got 10,000 customers. Collectively, they consume the same as Alcoa, or maybe about 1/3 of Alcoa. So give us that rate. And then pass some of that to the consumers and keep some of that. And they felt that on basic utilities, if you found out that you're paying for water 5% cheaper, gas 10% cheaper, electricity 20% cheaper, I'll go tell my brothers, my uncles, aunts, neighbors, get them all signed up. It'll create the viral marketing effect. Didn't happen. Got stuck somewhere in this ballpark. And what's the problem if you get stuck here for a while? What's the problem if you get stuck here for a while? You run out of money. Cash flow. Shut down. Eventually, in fact, I think one of the interesting things that you would see, and that's why you would see sometimes there is a rejuvenated interest. Some of the companies we thought we were dead are coming back again, is somehow some people didn't spend too much and recognize this is going to be a much slower process. Okay. Eventually, one of the interesting story is if a lot of these companies had cash, eventually a lot of them would have come under this. Maybe not to $1 or $2. A lot of them would have come under, but they simply did not have the staying power. Did not have, at some point in time, VCs say enough is enough. Okay. And so it's hard to figure out a lot of problems, but the expensive customer acquisition cost was the single most important reason. Okay. Sometimes, and one of the so if you, the psychology of consumers is very hard to figure out. In certain cases it changes, In some cases, consumers tend to be extremely conservative and do not change. You know, some behavioral marketing issues. I think if anybody who plays in this space, I wish they had spent more time in understanding the behavioral marketing issues, the psychology of the consumer, why they would do certain things, why they would not do certain things. Okay. And by the way, what is Skype? So after Hotmail, Skype, right? I talked about Skype. I think Skype has got, I think I saw the number, something like 40 million users globally now. The company has been around for only about 2 years or 2.5 years. It's a big viral marketing. Skype is, and guess who put money in? Do you know who put money in? The same guys who put money into Hotmail. Tim Draper is the same guy who put into Skype because, again, with Skype he saw the same viral marketing opportunities. And by the way, there's an interesting story. Everybody thought that the net was dead and nobody's going to pay a price. So last year somebody tried to buy Skype for $50 million. And Draper was an investor in that. And Draper said, I am not going to get to any negotiations on Skype. We are not going to sell the company now. The first starting point for selling the company would be $1 billion. He has so firmly believed in Skype, he said its first negotiation part would be $1 billion. And it sold for about 2.6 to eBay. Okay, eBay again is viral marketing. So some of these, Yahoo is viral marketing. Google is phenomenal viral marketing. Unbelievable viral marketing. Right? These companies barely advertised. They spend any money in advertising. Okay, so, but the key thing is for every one company that had good viral marketing, there were 60 other companies that got stuck on this. So one of the transforming experiences in the business models, and that's what you need to pay some attention to, the transforming experience in these business models from what happened in 1999 to what happened in 2003, 2004 is a transformational change. 2002, in 3 years it was a transformational change. Early on everybody was doing this banner advertising, right? And why did Yahoo collapse? Because Yahoo at one point in time was getting as much as $40 for 1,000 of those banner advertisements. But after some time everybody figured out it didn't work. See, one of the first time what happened with the internet, what is the biggest challenge in marketing and particularly advertising? What is the biggest challenge in advertising? Recognition, yeah. Recall. Reaching in consumer. Those are the objectives. But what is the real, but if I'm a CFO, return on investment, ROI. See, people never ask that question. See, there was one area in an enterprise where you never asked a question. You would be surprised. So companies like Procter & Gamble could spend, historically they spend 5% of sales on advertising. You ask them what's the ROI? I don't know. How long have you been doing this? 40 years. Right? That was, and so there was a nice convergence of factors. So if CFOs had one good thing to do, it was to shake up the marketing organizations and say, what do you mean when you spend $3 billion in a 30-second commercial on a Super Bowl? What does it mean? Do we have any way of knowing whether it works or not? Right? Because some of these companies spend enormous amount of money. So one part of it was the CFOs were asking, and the good and bad part of marketing was, you think it works, but it's impossible to prove. Very hard to show. Right? So what was the bad part of banner advertising? What was the thing that killed banner advertising? You remember those banner advertising is where everybody was going to make money early on. I'm going to sell the information. I'm Yahoo. I'm going to do zillions of banner advertising. What was the single most important thing that killed banner advertising? Now you can measure it, and we knew it didn't work. So the good part about the $3 million Super Bowl advertisement is it's impossible to prove it doesn't work. But on the banner advertisements, you immediately knew. By the end of the day, you knew it didn't work.
Nobody was going to the main site.
Not only that, nobody clicked. Yeah. Nobody clicked. So I can track it. I can tell you in real time these things don't work. And what do you think? Even the strongest proponent, if it doesn't work, what do? They pull the money out. Everybody pulled the money out. They said this thing doesn't work. Right? And so what happened? All the companies that were betting on advertising just collapsed. Right? What is the biggest challenge? Why is it so hard to, what is the, and the CFO side is one aspect of it, slowly starting to challenge marketing because they've done everything in production, all the supply chain, Sundar might disagree with this, but I tell Sundar, supply chain game is over. It's a concave function. There's only so much you can improve on logistics. I mean, you have done that part, right? I mean, if you're primitive, it's okay, but for any good organization, I've done I2, I've done logistics, I've done all of that, right? I've done JIT. It's a concave function. Cost extraction is a concave function. There has been a lot of investment, and they have gotten the productivity improvement. So one of the last areas to look for productivity improvement was marketing. That was from the CFO side. The other dynamics that was happening in marketing was the fragmentation, right? 20, 30 years ago, we had 3 large national televisions. It was easy to decide. Now there is enormous fragmentation of the market, tremendous number of channels. Where should I advertise? So targeting consumers has become a messy game. So here are somebody told me these numbers, right? When you are an automobile company, when you're doing this mainline advertising, less than 2% of the people who see your advertising will be buying a car in the next month. For 98% of that, and that's a time horizon. Before that, after that, people don't care. 98% of it is wasted. Targeting people is so difficult. So one of the fascinating things that happened was, rather than from these click and banner ads, we went to extremely targeted advertising, right? And I'll show you some of the strategies that you will see. Ability to target. There are certain cases I can almost target you with a laser beam focus. And there are a lot of this targeting becomes a needle in a haystack problem. There are 5 out of 100 customers. How do I need to get the message to those 5. I don't want to waste my resources for the remaining 95. Okay? That's where much of this game is. And dynamic to level of interest. So what I could do is, the second generation of advertising and internet is not only very close targeting, and let's say that you are there to buy a car and you're interested in a BMW, then I can push you more and more depending on your level of interest. Say, I want to see what the models are. I want to see what the options are. I want to see who the dealers are. I want to see their availability now. At every level, selectively, the more I know you're someone who's seriously interested, the more I can take you into that. Okay? And the fantastic part was, for the first time, marketing, I can truly measure its effectiveness. Right? The second reason why advertising has got such a big bounce, and what changed the whole internet model, why Google, Yahoo today are doing so much better, surprisingly, because when people have written off Yahoo 3 years ago, do you know what the reason is? One of the critical reasons is mainstream companies, the companies with real cash. Not, 99, it was all the banner ads were by these startup companies, right? Today you will see if you go to New York Times, chances are very high that you will see an automobile company like Ford or a Volvo advertising. These are real companies with real dollars. And by the way, a lot of companies, including General Electric, P&G, GM, have said that 5% of their advertising budget, it's a corporate mandate, 5% of their advertising budget has to go to online. Okay, if you're a brand and if you come in and you say that, Cadillac division and we spend $150 million a year, you got to spend 10 million of that online. Okay, so there's a mandate, and not only 10%, they want to grow that percentage. So, and the nice part is I can measure the effectiveness. I can see how many people were interested in, how many people actually led to leads to dealers, how many people went and selected options, right? I can track much more. I'll come back to that in a moment. Here is the interesting way Google, somebody asked, how do they make money? Google is the keyword search, right? So the idea behind money making on this, I will show it to you as to how Google, how Yahoo, or which is Overture, makes money. It's the same idea Google uses. By the way, Google again. So this is the company that actually showed Google how to make money, and Google was a better search engine, so it made more money. But this is the company that gave the idea, and you will see this, right? It's part of Yahoo now. This company has been bought by Yahoo. And you will see some really fascinating numbers on this, and how this advertising has become very sophisticated. I hope the wireless works.
Slides will be handed out at the end of the presentation.
Yeah. So I'm going to search the word insurance, right, on the web. So the assumption, why is it different? So it's about an insurance company advertising either on network television or on New York Times versus somebody searching for insurance. If I type the word insurance, there is some reasonable probability I'm either interested in buying some type of insurance, right? So there is a much higher probability that I'm buying some insurance. So let's see, I type the word insurance in here. Right? And I'm going to search the web. So it has got all these insurance companies, right? Geico car insurance and so on and so forth. But you will see all of them are the so-called sponsored listing. Okay, it's no longer, keep in mind when Yahoo started, they decided who should come in what order. Okay, historically, originally they said this is the best site, so we'll put them. Now it's no longer that. It's a question of who pays the most. So the slot that you want at the top depends on how much you're willing to pay. And now you can actually find out how much people are willing to pay, and you will be surprised. View advertisers maximum bid. There is some security things I need to get through. P-S. Search the web. It's in small print, but can you read those numbers?
Per hit, right?
Yeah. How much they are willing to pay? Can you see right on top? $5.
So someone enters the...
So if I want to make Yahoo, by the way, I'll tell you, or Overture, whatever the company is, if I go and do this, ka-ching, $5.
So I would, as a company person, keep hitting on that site.
Now you have to go on. So if I want to, so if this is it. Now AIG pays $5 to Overture. Now, isn't that an easy way to make money, Steve?
That's $5 right there.
$5 right there. What is the cost for that? Now we get a sense of scalability, right? Now we get a sense of scalability. Now go back and think about GM loses money on all the new cars, not on the SUVs. The sedans it sells, it loses money.
Part of that price is they want to be at the top of the list.
List.
When you type in insurance.
Insurance, yeah. Yeah, part of the thing is that so you can see the prices. What do you think will happen to the prices if you go down? It comes down. So, oops, some other shift in search. I don't know how that happened. So you can see that now the prices, see that once I come to 5, it comes down pretty substantially, right? Now, if you have an insurance company and you want to be ahead of AIG insurance, how much do you have to pay? 504. And someone like Overture says, I'm not going to set the price, let the market set the price. I'm not going to set the price, right? Now, if you're Geico, and some of you, the North American participants know Geico is a very large insurance company, right? Geico is a very large, you get tired of seeing their mainstream advertising, right? There's enormous amount of Geico, even for the international participants. If you have, turned on your TV for a day or two, you probably would have seen a couple of Geico commercials, right? So these guys advertise like crazy. Now, How does Geico decide whether they should be in the third spot or in the first spot? How do you decide that? What do you do? What is the core assumption behind this pricing strategy? What is the core assumption behind the pricing strategy? Why does it pay to be on the top? Higher you are, the more people are going to click, and not only more people are going to click, they are going to end up buying. See, because the good part is now I can track on a daily basis. Before, if people come, actually you have that information. Once they've used the keyword, if people don't click on your site, you don't pay anything. You just show up there. So you know how many times people use the word insurance and how many times people have used the word insurance and clicked on your site. And how many of them they ended up buying insurance from you. If you want, you can get it by the hour. By the hour, so most of these reports are by the day.
So they can change that.
They can change the bid anytime they want. So they experiment. So if I'm Geico, I say, hey, even though at 3 there are fewer people clicking on me, I can spend $1 more and go up, and probably a few more will click, but doesn't seem to be worth that $1 extra. So dynamically the marketplace adjusts depending on what is the optimal position. So some of these guys are sitting down, doing it, fine-tuning it every week or so. Darryl.
But Geico may have enough name recognition just being near the top.
Could be sufficient.
See their
Absolutely,
name, click on it,
absolutely.
just
But
bypass it.
Darryl, absolutely. But the point I'm trying to make here is that Geico can figure it out within a week. What is a good sweet spot for them to be in? Does it make sense for the marketing guy to spend another $10,000 to move up to first, and he finds out, hey, I added only 20 more customers. It's not worth it.
Yeah, you're saying he can measure the price, the number of hits, and how much business it brought.
Burden. So I can look at it for each position, and then I can self-optimize. But the market is not static, right? Market is not static. Market moves along. Therefore, I could do that, right? So the company who came up with this idea was Overture, but nobody knew Overture, right? Who knew Overture? Has anyone known about Overture before? How many of you knew about Overture? Nobody knew Overture. So it had a great idea, but nobody used that as a search engine. MSN was popular, Yahoo was popular, Lycos was popular, right? Nobody was using this as a search engine. So Overture made a very smart move. You know what they did? They went to Yahoo, they went to MSN, and they went to Lycos, and they said, you know what, guys? So they were all just cataloging. Keep in mind, until then, MSN, Yahoo were just cataloging arbitrarily. Whatever they thought should be, if you type in insurance, some person was deciding. And Lycos was the first one that automated the process. By the way, Lycos came out of Carnegie Mellon. For those of you who don't know, it was a PhD student's project. Lycos was another search engine, some of you might remember, was the first crawler. It said that we're not going to have human beings sitting and documenting. Lycos is an early version of Google, didn't have as much of intelligence as Google in terms of the search. If they did, Lycos would have been the Google. But Lycos is the first one to take the human element out and crawl and use some intelligence to categorize these pages. Okay? But nobody was paying at that point in time. Overture was the only one who said, why should we tell who is number one? Let the market decide. If the company is very good, what happens if a lousy company, let's say that I start a company called Kannan Insurance Company and pay $10 and go right on top. What's going to happen to me? I'm going to go out of business, right? If people click and they don't buy my product, I have nothing good to offer, I'll go out of business. So Overture said, why are we sitting in cataloging? Let the market figure out. With a pricing mechanism, the quality will flow to the top naturally. I don't have to sit there and intervene into this mechanism, right? But Overture was an unknown company. So how did Overture get to be popular? So they did not. So they did a very smart move. They quickly formed partnership with Yahoo, Microsoft, MSN, and Lycos. They basically said, look, if I get $5 for a click, you put me on your site whenever somebody searches. So if you go to Yahoo, so I'll open up and you will see the same thing. Okay, so let's kind of do some last bit of discussion on some of these pages. Ability to interact, target. This is what it is. Understand competition better. Go to the site. If your competitors, you can put and see how the traffic for competition is changing. Okay. Next generation analytics. So what does it mean? So one of the things that we keep talking about is data analytics. Most companies haven't gotten their act together for data analytics, and you're already going to the next generation of data analytics. Okay? And what are the next generation of data analytics? There are, I think, two interesting things that I think we can, those are going to be important. One is dynamic pricing. Okay, one of the dynamic pricing. I think pricing as a concept has to go from static to dynamic. So how do we do dynamic pricing? I think it's going to be an incredible opportunity area, and particularly when you think in terms of e-music, it has already started, right? With the iPod and all those downloads that you have. How do I? So music is an industry that is just going. It's already getting transformed enormously, and it's going to be completely transformed in the next 24 months or so, where I think most of the sales is going to come from downloads on the internet. So how do I price? How should I price it on the opening day? How should I price it a week later? Okay. How do I determine about that? So how do I generate analytics? How do I generate analytics to really understand dynamic pricing? There are some very interesting models. Some of us have worked on. One of the areas I worked on is how do I build real-time experimentation and find out what the optimal pricing path should be. The next one is clickstream data analysis. One of the research paper that myself and one of my colleagues have worked on is that one of the challenges buying online, one of the challenges if you're Amazon, what is one of the challenges buying online? Half the people who open the basket, you know, they open the shopping cart, they never close. They come that far, put the items, and they don't close, right? Think about if you're Walmart, imagine 50% of the people who buy go to the cash counters and just run out saying that I don't want to buy. It doesn't happen, but online it happens. So one of the, and an interesting associated trick online is what fraction of the people, so how do I know when a customer is coming to online, to Amazon, how do I know when they're trying to surf and find out information to when are they going to buy? So one of the models that we have built is once you have this, Amazon has this detailed clickstream data. Clickstream data means that once you're a customer, page by page viewing is captured by Amazon. Right? We have built a model with 5 or 6 clicks, we can start assigning with very good prediction whether you're going to buy or whether you're going to search and exit. After 6 or 7 clicks, our models get to be 80% accurate. Okay, when you're making the 7th click, our models will tell you Sanjay is likely to buy with 80%. Maybe throw him a little coupon, just tell him that if he buys in the next 15 minutes, 50 cents off or something, from 80% he's likely to switch to 100% and he's likely to buy. Whereas Arvind is only at 5% interest in buying, so don't waste any dynamic marketing activity. It's unlikely that he's ever going to be a buyer, and if he clicks customer service, don't bother answering him because he's not going to buy. Don't waste your resources on him. Right? Send it to some automated machines that has got 10 options, right? So you could do that, right? The second type of analysis is for Best Buy, what is that I can learn online? Because online it's much easier to change product mix, change prices. So if I'm Best Buy, what I learned from online, price elasticities, how do I transport to my offline and change my pricing? Okay. A third one that we are doing, which I think is really also equally interesting, is from the sequence, you tell me the sequence of clicks, I'm going to profile you. I'm going to tell whether it's a male or a female, try to guess their age, guess their ethnicity, guess their income, guess their education. Just by looking at the pattern of clickstream, and you would be surprised. After about, if I have enough data, I can build these models. I don't need to ask Niraj anything. But based on a sequence of clicks, I can start assigning, he's got a master's degree, he's likely to be a professional, his age, right? Everything we can forecast. So there are so the next generation of issues also involve how do we get this enormous flow of data and how do we analyze this? And for some of you who have done anything on RFID, how do I use the RFID data on top of this? Okay. I think I've ran out of time, but this is my last slide. Because one of the issues that we started out talking about is new business models, and one of the things I was trying to get you through is scalable models, right? Scalable. Think about, in your enterprise, think about scalability. Scalability is a true way of releasing assets. It's a very hard thing to achieve. It doesn't matter what enterprise you are in. Not everybody is working for Google, but you can create some scalable assets, and different ways of creating scalability. Some of it is purely technology. Google, Yahoo, I would probably put Netflix, where the scalability truly comes from technology. The second one is called as externality, right? Tipping point. Once I get to be so big, I dominate the space. Nobody wants to go and do any auctions outside of eBay because whatever I'm selling, there are people to buy. Whatever I want to buy, somebody is selling. It has reached the tipping point. It dominates the space. The fabulous wonders, right? Cisco doesn't make anything, right? Do you know that? They just use the intelligence, design everything, get it all outsourced. There's a local company called Acoustica. What does it do? It does miniaturized microphones. It's a startup company. Miniaturized microphones that can get into zillions of things. Right? Into your laptops, into your chips, into your wallet, into your credit cards. You can get a miniaturized microphone. But it's a purely design company. This is what I call as fabulous wonders. That is that they don't make anything. And the way they achieve scalability is to get somebody else to do the manufacturing process. Assemblers, right? Dell is, all I do is focus on assembling. I don't do anything else. And I saw somebody from Boeing here, right?
Is left.
Mike is left. So Boeing is what? Boeing is trying to become like Dell. I don't know if you should talk to Mike. Boeing is increasingly trying to get, if you see the Dreamliner, what was that? 7, something like that. The Dreamliner, the new one. The wings are made in Japan. You would see a remarkable similarity between Boeing and Dell. And branding, scalable. Caterpillar, right? But you know what John Deere does? You know John Deere mowers? They don't buy any product. They never take ownership. They don't have any of those components. It's fully outsourced. They do the design, they put the brand name, they're manufactured in China, Brazil, elsewhere, directly shipped to retailers. They never take ownership. They do just the design part of it and stamp the brand name. They don't make any. One interesting way of scalable, because these companies are not intrinsically that scalable, but here also they see some exciting opportunities to scale. I'll stop here. Any questions? All right. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.